Hey everyone, I'm Brad from Calgary.
This is Sean from Cambridge, Ontario.
I'm Terry from Cornwall, Ontario.
Hey, this is Larry from Pitt Meadows, British Columbia, and you're listening to the Towing Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Towing Life Podcast, where the ditches are deep, the trucks are loaded, but the drivers are not. I am your host, TowManG, and as usual, I am joined by my friend, former co-worker, the one chain wonder himself, Mr. PlainGuy.
Ooh, you make me sound so fancy, G. I love your introductions. You make me sound phenomenal. If this was the other way around and I was giving you an intro, I don't know if I would be so complimentary.
Maybe next week we can try that.
Next week I'll do the intro?
Yeah, just to change it up a little bit. See how well you do.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the PlainGuy Show. I am without a co-host this week because I fired him. This is the Towing Life Podcast. There's my intro. It's done. Send it. You probably don't want me doing the intro for that reason alone. We joked around about that before, where it was always I'd always make the mistake of the PlainGuy Show instead of the Towing Life Podcast, and that's exactly what would happen if you weren't doing the intro. That is strategically placed, ladies and gentlemen.
But at least you stick true to this show. You left the PlainGuy Show in the dust. You recorded my episode to interview me on there, and then just said, "Nope, fuck it, I'm done."
I never am going to live that one down. It is in the banks. It'll make a comeback at one point. I have been focusing my time on tow trucks and this show. There's only so much I can do. You are like my wife. You tell me to do it. You don't have to remind me every 3 months, okay? It'll get done. It will get done. Married life is hard.
Get done your spiel, buddy.
Married life is hard. That is my spiel. Now, so guys, if you have any comments, questions, things you want discussed on the show, you can reach out to us. We are going to get to one on the show today. We were sent through the website, towinglife.ca. Be sure to check it out. A question from Dirt. That is the name he chose to leave. That is the name we are going to go with. You can remain anonymous if you send them in.
Unless it's a bad name that we can't say on air.
Then we probably won't. Well, I need to get a bleep button. I should really get a bleep button. I used to have one when we did the streaming idea.
You would break that button with the amount that we swear, man.
That's fair. That's fair. But you two might like us more then.
Maybe.
So if you have any questions, you can visit the towinglife.ca. You can find us on Facebook at the Towing Life Podcast, or you can email us directly at thetowinglife@gmail.com. You will find us on the social media. We've got these weekend warriors like you see here behind me. There's a lot going on. We've got a couple polls coming out. The social media guys, you guys have killed it. Guys and girls. We set out with this idea to put a microphone in front of us and talk about towing. Two great things have happened. We were contacted by Tow Canada magazine, who has put out an amazing article. You guys check it out. towcanada.ca, if I'm not mistaken. We'll put the link up in the description. You can get a free digital edition of the magazine. In there, they did 4 pages, 4 pages. If I could read, I'm sure it was a phenomenal article.
I can read, and it was.
Sarah over at Tow Canada did an amazing job putting it together. We want to take a time to thank her. As you can see, I've actually got the Tow Canada magazine behind me. That is an old 2015, I want to say, edition. No, they did an awesome job.
You can't read, but you can write. So who proofread it for you?
I had a friend, actually, that a good friend of mine that runs now a PR business out in Vancouver. And she would be kindly enough to go over all of my articles before I submitted them. That was a great friend to have.
I bet.
So no, Tow Canada is doing some awesome things. We appreciate the shout out, guys, from you. We appreciate the article. It keeps us moving forward. Social media, you guys have stepped up. You know, this week you'll see in the post that went out, over 1,000 followers on Facebook. I mean, from where we started to where we've gotten already, it is so encouraging. It's so humbling, and it's so encouraging to continue to bring amazing content.
Thank you from the heart of my bottom, every one of you out there.
The heart of my bottom.
from the heart
That
of
is
my
the
bottom.
most G thing you will hear on this episode.
Don't sell me short, man. You don't know. We're not through it yet.
Also, you'll see we've got the wonderful Baker Heavy Towing again this week. Special shout out to them. If you want to be, Baker is an amazing supporter of the show. If you want to become a supporter of the show, head on over to www.towinglife.ca. You will find the information there. Everything is there on how to become a supporter. You can reach out to us. We'll go through some packages, some plans we have for you. You guys continue to just blow our minds. And I'm so happy to be here. Gee, I'm just happy to be here.
I'm just happy to be a part of it because apparently my job is on rocky waters.
Rocky waters, and he wonders why his job is in question, ladies and gentlemen. we're gonna put a poll up next week after this episode airs on who says who should we get rid of. We'll do one episode, and I'll stick to this. Maybe not the next one, but we will do one episode. You guys are gonna get the right to pick. We are gonna do one episode without one of us. We will substitute in a co-host. We will find somebody to do it, but you have to choose who is going to sit out an episode between G and myself. I'm curious what the people have to say. I think I'm pumping my own tires, and I think they are going to boot me the fuck off my own show.
So I'm okay with this, but does this mean I have to edit the video that I'm not in if I don't win?
Yes, that is your punishment.
How is it my punishment? What's your punishment then? Not getting your face in lights for a week?
There we go. There we go. I know. I'm going to have a nice vacation. I won't have to do all this show prep. It'll be phenomenal. That's my punishment. What's my punishment?
What I have to deal with, guys? Just, this rude guy.
Can you believe we worked together at one point?
Yeah. Yeah.
We tone it down for the sake of this show. Could you imagine us actually working together in real life? It was rough.
Yeah, especially now that I'm not green and timid. Yeah. I don't know. And you want me to move to you to work with you again. Fuck that.
Oh, man. It's always in good fun. And for the sake of the show, it is definitely in good fun. So, G, why don't you get us started? So what are we going over today? What do you want to talk about?
So we've got a question from Dirt, as we've gone over already.
Dirt's a good guy.
Yeah.
Unassuming guy.
Yeah. Dirt's gender neutral, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, his question was, what do you like about your career the most? And his is getting to help people and drive a nice chromed out tow truck. Very good question. I do like how you said career in that, because a lot of people think of this as a job, and to some people it is a career. And if it's a career to you out there listening, right on. Good for taking pride in this industry. To be honest with you, the one main reason why I got into this job in the first place is because I too like to help people. Before I was a tow truck driver, I normally pulled over on the side of the road if I saw someone with their four-ways on, just to see if I could help them out. I knew a couple of people who drove tow trucks and throw some cash their way. And plus, I drove an old ship box. So what a better way to be a tow truck driver, to be able to tow my own shit. And it's just snowballed down into, this is what I know and this is what I love, and it's part of me, part of my life, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
I think that's fair. I think if you get into this industry, or career, as Dirt like to say, without a certain amount of wanting to help people, I mean, what else did you get into it for? The great hours? The wonderful work conditions?
The great sleep schedule?
Exactly. Like, if that's why you got into it, woohoo, I got news for you. So I think they're always, anyone that's gotten into it, or anyone that has stayed into it, because it's easy to get into towing, right? We see that revolving door of, operator in, operator out, 6 months, a year, whatever it is. I think if anyone's going to make a long-term run at it and make it a career, you've got to have that knack for, helping people. At the end of the day, honestly, it does feel good. You might not think about it, and it depends on the type of towing you're doing. And I think that's where we might have a different opinion than others, right? You talk to an operator who strictly does repoing. He might not have the same intentions, meaning I didn't get in to help people. I'm not saying you're doing a job. But when you start to get into roadsides, when you're actually dealing with the customers on the side of the road, I think you have to have a certain level of wanting to help people, or you wouldn't have made it as far as you did into the career, right? It would be very short-lived because, again, it's not for the great, hours. It's not for the great working condition. It's not for, the driving the nice trucks. That's a perk.
Yep.
I've driven bad trucks. I've driven nice trucks and everything in between. It's definitely a perk. You take pride in your truck. You want a fancy truck. You want that, that truck that turns heads. I've definitely had one or two. But no, you got to definitely have that want to help people. And so for myself, a lot of it was that. I don't think that's why I got into it, but I definitely think that's something that's kept me around. When I got into it, I'll be honest. PlainGuy story time. When I got into it, I had the opportunity I was working for a father of a friend, and he was an electrician. And he was offering to sign me up for my apprenticeship. I was working for him, everything was good. He was busy. Hey, would you be interested? Yeah, sure. I think it'd be fun. And I had a bunch of buddies from the Speedway and places that I hung out that drove tow truck. And I'd started working part-time for them. They offered me right around the same time, full-time. So I had to decide, go for my electrician's apprenticeship or become a tow truck driver. Hindsight is a bitch. It truly is. I don't regret my decisions, but at the same time, you look back and go, you were one crazy, stupid idiot.
You were single at the time, weren't you?
I wasn't married, but I don't remember if I was single.
Yeah, you weren't married.
I wasn't married.
Definitely a deciding factor.
Oh,
I know
100%.
for married people getting into the towing industry, it is a massive shock on the other party.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah. That's why a lot of people aren't making it. If you're getting into it at a young age where your life is still fairly flexible, you can do all right, because then if you meet someone and you bring them in, well, that's your life already. And if they don't like it, well, it's not going to work out for both of you, right? If this is what you really want to do. Mm-hmm. But for someone who, let's say you're 45, married with 2 kids, and you drive dump truck and you're home every weekend, you want to get into towing, well, it's not the same animal.
No.
Right?
No, not at all. When there's kids involved, when there's everything else, you do. You find the guys that have been around, got into it before they had all that, and then learned, to integrate it into their life as they went. Yep. I used to have a coworker at one point. I won't mention any names. He'll know. I think he listens, so I'll be expecting a phone call. This guy was one of the most productive operators. Great guy. Go, go, go. And he had this cycle. He was a hard worker. He was phenomenal. And then he would meet somebody. And the job started to interfere with the time you could spend with, especially in a new relationship. And he would become, lazier. Great guy. But it was a cycle. And then 6 months would go by, whatever it would be. Normally they would separate because it is a hard life and it does take a toll on new relationships. And he would be back to the hardest working guy I've ever met in my life. And motivated and go. And then we'd get into that cycle, meet a partner again. And it's tough, right? That article that you see behind us in the magazine, that's one that I'd written years ago. And it's towing is the relationship killer. We take into account all of the effects that, what our cost per mile is, what our, overheads are, what our wear and tear is, but we don't think of the wear and tear of the operators at home. And that's why we are looking to we want to get a better half at one point on this show. We do have something lined up coming up in the next month or two. I don't know when we're going to get to it. There's a lot going on right now, but it's really interesting to hear the other side of it, right? I'd love to have my wife on it. Honestly, I don't know if I could handle 45 minutes of her telling me why it's so bad. So I'd rather hear it from somebody that I'm not married to. But getting into it, it seemed fun. It seemed interesting. That's what it was. It seemed unique. It's something not a lot of people do. I realize why, but not a lot of people do it. Staying in it was honestly the ability to come home at night, regardless of the day you had, and you had good and bad days, but to feel good that just have that kind of, I'm not trying to claim that, this God complex, but you did help people out. And that meant a lot to me.
I really enjoy the recoveries too. Like I tell people, this is what I normally do for fun on the weekends. I'm just here so I can get paid doing it during the week.
Right?
And the recoveries, depending on where you are, if you're further up north than us, you're probably going to run into some crazy badass recoveries that I just wish I could be a part of. But we do mostly medium to light duty winch outs, especially coming up into the winter here. You can bang off a lot of those in a short amount of time, just leaving your snatch blocks on your winch and just hanging those off the boom and just go, 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 go. And that's, I showed up to a couple of vehicles where they're down the ditch and they've put their tow hook into their bumper and they're like, oh, I got a spot for you to pull from. And I have to pull on a 90-degree angle. And I say, I don't want to buy you a bumper today. I'm going to figure out my own spot. Thank you very much. And I think that can roll us into our next point is who's using tow hooks? Like the screw-in tow hooks that go into bumpers. And why are you using them? Now, I know the biggest reason why you'd use them, and the only time I would ever use them is for loading a car onto a flatbed. And even then, you still got to be careful because A, it's going to be pulling the car one direction because it's off-centered. So then you might have to run a snatch block back up to by the headache rack to try to keep it a little bit more centralized, rolling up on your drum. But they're designed for flat towing, just to move a vehicle out of its spot type thing. And what's it rated for? Is the rating that's on it only for when it's screwed all the way in? Well, what if the car's 10 years old and it won't screw all the way in? Now what's it rated for? There's just too many unknown possibilities for me to feel confident doing any sort of real work with one of those tow hooks.
If I ever catch you using one for a recovery, I'm going to hit you over the head on the snatch block that you left on the back of your truck. Of what I understand, to the best of my knowledge, those tow hooks were designed for loading and unloading vehicles. That is what they were made for flatbeds. You are correct. You are right whenever you say you almost have to run a snatch block back to center that hook on the pull, because if you have a winch line coming straight down your truck and you have that hook is not dead center, it's normally off to the side. As you get up, you're starting to give a side pull on it. Let's run a snatch block back up to the side of your flatbed, to whatever side the hook is offset to, which will give you a center pull.
More centered.
You're never going to be perfect.
Your winch is still going to wrap funny on the drum, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's getting closer. As for, hey, customer supplies the hook and puts it in. Or you put it in, customer supplies the hook, and that hook fails. Who's responsible? I understand the need on why these hooks came out, right? Biggest thing we had, most common tool to load on a flatbed was a J-hook. Everyone carried one. You had your J-hook, you reached underneath, you grabbed the control arms. If you were bad at your job, you'd grab tie rods and CV boots. If you were good at your job, you'd go, actually the proper way was to go over the A-arm, I believe, and then lock in. That way you wouldn't accidentally grab something. A-arms started to get aluminum, all these different materials they were coming out with. They didn't want you putting steel hooks on. I get it. You could notch the A-arm. We're talking. To do it seems, it's possible, but it seems unlikely. But I'm not an engineer. I'm a tow truck operator. So they came out with these tow hooks. They screw in. Then you started seeing these universal ones you could put on anything. You started seeing flatbed guys carrying their own. They are a mess. If you don't want to put, steel J-hook on an aluminum composite, whatever it may be, A-arm, they sell tools for that. Talk to your, us here in Ontario, Canadian Towing Equipment. There's a couple others. Talk to them. They do sell. I would not want to be. This is why I love Wreckers. Because they sell a strap version of a V-chain. We'll call it a V-strap. Sounds dirty. And what it is the same idea. It hooks onto your winch. It's got the two straps that go out in a V. And then instead of having a J hook or a cluster on it to go into an R slot or a T slot, you would have a strap that goes around the A-arm and clips back onto itself. So it's all soft strap. You pull the vehicle up from there. I am trusting that as long as it is maintained. I don't know if I've ever used a tow hook. I'm trying to think if I've ever actually used a tow hook. I don't trust them. I've seen guys pull stuff, start pulling sideways. Do not load those things sideways. They're aluminum, or some crap steel 90% of the time. They are designed with a single purpose, to pull straight. You start pulling those off to the side, using that as a lazy way to do a recovery out of a ditch, you are asking for somebody to get hurt.
I've used one. I set a car down, I was picking a car up and it was sitting in grass and it sunk down. And I couldn't quite get my wheel lift underneath the front of the car. It was a front wheel drive car.
Right.
And the guy was like, well, I put the tow hook in thinking the flatbed was going to come. And I was like, okay. So I just ran my one winch line down to that tow hook, picked the weight up off the suspension, just enough to get my wheel lift underneath of it, and set it back down, put my scoops on. And then I had to double pick the car, but that's all I did with it. And I said to the guy, I was like, do you really care about this tow hook? And he was like, no, it's like a 15-year-old car. I don't care. I was like, perfect. Thank you.
That is not where I seen that story going. I really thought you were going to tell me that you used it to pull the car forward a foot because it had sunken into the grass to get it back up onto high ground. Instead, you use it to lift the car in the air.
I didn't lift the car in the air. I lifted it up about 2 inches and the tires didn't even move. I was just taking the weight off the suspension.
I mean, and that's where, we talk about perfect scenarios, right? Is that what it's designed for? No. Would I do it? I don't know, right? In that situation, what was the worst that would have happened? The hook let go. You were just taking the weight off the suspension. So we did not have that thing loaded to the tits, right? It was just taking the weight of the suspension. Even if it let go, the car, it's not like the car slamming to the ground, sliding back into a ditch. So yes, it's not, you'll have those, the tow police sitting there going, it's not rated for that. Don't do it. Just like I told you, don't recover one out of a ditch. But that's not the be all end all. There's situations where stuff like that comes out, right? Don't hook a J hook onto a rim, right? There's a situation with a steel rim on a mangled car, possibly on a, whatever the case may be, where that might be a good option. That's, don't let the tow police discourage you all the time. There is pure stupidity that we see out there on the road nonstop. Right? I was scrolling through social media right before we started tonight, and I seen one where a guy had a SUV loaded on a flatbed. It was an SUV, alloy rim, 5-spoke alloy rim with a J hook just sitting on the spoke of the rim as a securement. And it's like, don't do that. I'm not going to sit here and criticize the guy. Maybe there was a reason. There's always that possibility.
I pulled into the gas station last night to get fuel in my tow truck, and I see this car blocking the diesel pump of all places. It was a little Pontiac G5.
There's a special spot in hell for those people, and I know they don't know that when you pull into a fuel station, there's one diesel pump, and the only pump that has a car in front of it is that goddamn diesel pump, and they're sitting there in their Toyota Corolla. There's a special place in hell for those people. Continue.
These people definitely did not know they were blocking the diesel pump, because this story goes downhill really quick. So I see the hood open on the car, and I was like, okay, whatever. And there's this van circling this car like weirdly. So I pull up onto the other side of the diesel pump, and this van pulls up nose to nose with this car, and then backs up and drives around and pulls up behind the car, and now the trunk's open, and I kind of overhear a bit of this conversation as I'm throwing my garbage out, and I think their battery's dead. A dead battery at a gas pump normally means a tow. And I see them breaking out jumper cables. And I look over at this. I was like, here, let me grab my pack and help you. And they're like, oh, thank you, thank you. I was like, yeah, it's a little safer for our well-being. And they're like, why? I was like, you're using jumper cables which cause sparks sitting next to a gas pump. They're like, oh, I never thought of that. You never thought a spark at a gas pump was a bad idea.
I remember there was a fuel station at the town that I used to live in that I believe they wouldn't let us boost at the pumps. If it needed a boost, they would ask us to push the car away from the pumps.
I normally do that, but with my
Not a bad
pack, I can put the clamps on with the pack turned off, so there's no real chance of having a spark.
Well, there still is once you turn it on.
Yeah, but it's still a lot safer than having two positive or
Yeah,
having a
especially when you'd
positive.
see Barney at the pumps with it going, let me make sure they're good.
Yeah. So
Getting
these
them
two
together
ladies
since
driving this
starts.
car, were more concerned on the party they're about to go to. This is a Saturday night because they're all dressed up and dolled up. And so I put my pack on and it was reading 12.3 volts. And I was like, I don't think your battery's dead, but we'll give it the good college try. And she tries to start it and just nothing. Couple more times, nothing. I was like, here, let me try. I hop in and I just fiddle around with the key a little bit, whisper some sweet nothings into the ear, and the car starts. And I step out and she's like, is it weird if I hug you? And I was like, well, with the whole pandemic thing on, yeah, kind of. But you're welcome. And I walked into the station to pay. And I was like, well, I might have just saved your gas station. I told him the story, and the guy walked in behind me, and he was like, wait, is that bad to boost at a pump? It's like, yeah. I'm not sure if he was serious or not, but it's just,
I mean, if they won't let you talk on your cell phone
yeah.
while you're at the pump, and I don't think that's for distracted purposes. I imagine it's not great to be putting electricity from one
I
vehicle
had
to another.
a attendant one day actually tell me it was because people are dumb when they're looking at their cell phone. That's why they don't say.
Oh, maybe it is then. I figured it was some,
Well,
arcing
people play on their cell phone and end up hitting us on the roads, so it's pretty easy to overfill your tank if that clicker stops. And if you're looking at your cell phone or sitting in the car, you might
Well, a
not
lot of them
notice
don't
it.
even have the clicker anymore. You can't sit there and let it. Diesel pumps still have it, thank the Lord Jesus. But
Some of them do.
Yeah, some of them do. Those are always great. Remember stuffing the gas cap in them. I don't know where you guys are listening from. If you have that, let us know, please. But where we are, most of the pumps, they've released the auto locks. They've taken them off where you could, you pull the pump, you click it on, and then it'll click off whenever it's going. Mind you, our station had a high flow diesel, and the thing did not work. I found that out one day, like the auto off. I was sitting there pumping, and goes great to your story. I'm sitting there on my phone, and it's pumping and it's pumping and pumping. In my defense, as soon as it popped out, I went, "Oh, that's not normal." But yeah, their clicker had been acting up. I probably dropped a couple liters on the ground. We laid the absorb all down and called it a day. But yeah, no, the fuel stations, boosting at the pump, not the greatest idea. Definitely safer with a pack compared to two people with a set of cables that have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
Cables are probably 20 years old, like most customers are. Nobody's rocking a new set of booster cables. It's like hand-me-downs their parents gave them 15 years ago.
Yeah, they're the old blue ones, and part of the plastic shrouding's coming off on the end. So when you hold the handle, you got to make sure not to touch the fucking wire to get zapped yourself. Yeah, those are great. I love
It's
those.
always safer to leave it to the professionals. Ladies and gentlemen, you guys listening will understand that. But
Speaking
I'm sure
of
you
that,
have your stories of people like that.
aftermarket tow hooks. Big no-no. In
I don't
high
agree with
school,
them.
a buddy put on one of those fancy red bulgy ones on the back of his Camry, and he was like, "Oh yeah, it's super strong." And I was probably the same size as I am now. And I was like, "Oh yeah, strong, eh?" And I stepped on it, put all my weight on it, and fucking ripped the bastard right off. I was like, "Real strong, eh?"
Oh, those like cheapy race car tow hooks they would put on.
ones.
Oh, yeah,
The ones that
there's-
make you look fast.
Does it really make you look fast when you got a hook that makes it easily to pull you out?
Yeah, it adds an extra 25 horsepower, just like the all the stickers. Right? Each
5
sticker you put
horsepower
on there
sticker.
adds about 10 horsepower.
Every operator out there will have a kid in their town, and you know the one we're talking about, who's driving around in some old, I remember seeing like Sunfires with ground effects kits and, the kid would put a gloss pack on the back and a cold air intake, and he was a race car. Adding the stickers and the, you know, the poor man's underglow and everything else. Oh God. And you guys know you hated towing that guy. You hated towing that guy because you get there and you go like, yeah, all right, I know what I'm doing. And you get there, oh, watch my baby. I treat every car, let me correct this, like it's a BMW. But at the same time, I have seen people with $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 Mercedes that were less picky about the towing procedure than a 17-year-old kid with a 92 Sunfire with a ground effects kit on it. It's like, I'm going to treat it well either way, but like, let's be honest, it's a $1,000 car. And I know it's all you can afford at this time. I get it. You take pride in it. But the Bondo and the brushed on paint at the back tells me you might not take the most pride in it.
I'll give you a $100 Amazon gift card to go out and rebuy all your stickers on the new car I buy you if I fuck this one up. And that's, to be honest with you, when people are paranoid that way, I normally just say, if I break it, I buy it. I'm fixing it. Right?
Yeah,
so obviously I'm going to do everything in my power not to cause damages to your car.
That is the last thing you want to say when you get brought to court. He said if he broke it, he'd buy
it. I worded it a little bit differently, but you know.
Sometimes talking too much is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Not on this show, but with your customers, sometimes talking too much is a bad thing.
Yes. Shut the fuck up sometimes. I should really take my own advice.
So talking about, you know, tow hooks, pulling vehicles out of in the ditches. Let's talk about in the ditch. That was a terrible segue, but I love it. Let's talk about in the ditch, right? Everyone's going to have an opinion on this. Everyone does. If you've never used a set of Dollies before, your back's probably in pretty good shape.
I envy you.
What's that?
I envy the person who's never used Dollies.
I don't, because that means they drive a flatbed, and everyone knows where I stand. Flatbeds are rookie trucks. Flatbeds are taking over wreckers. I get it, but to me, flatbeds will always be rookie trucks.
Hey, you can have a set of Dollies on your flatbed, then you can do double all-wheel drive.
You should have a set of Dollies on your flatbed.
Or at least have a set of Dollies at the shop ready for that flatbed, if you don't have the storage room on the flatbed itself.
Son of a... You know what? This just made a great point. I'd have to check the width on them. I just had this conversation with somebody. I won't name names. We were talking about, he asked me, you ever used Go-Jacks before? I said, nope, never used them. You know, looking at something to unload vehicles locked in park on flatbeds. Why are nobody putting Dollies on them? Think about it. Most vehicles that are locked in park it's not all four axles that are locked.
9 times out of 10, yeah.
Yeah, one will roll, right?
Yeah.
And I know you can't tow them down the road, but to get them up onto a bed or something, and if not, you know, let's talk about front wheel drives nosed in, stuck in park. You don't have to shake on your bed. Throw a set of Dollies under them. Who needs Go-Jacks?
You lose all your steering with a Dolly like that, where you're Go-Jacks.
Where you're leaving all four wheels on the ground. You do. Yeah. I mean, once it's on the bed, like, you know, depending on the situation.
Yeah, if you drag something on with your skates.
Yeah.
Where you get it.
You lose the steering too.
Yeah. But if you get it straight with your skates or whatever, just to avoid making a flat spot on their tire.
Yeah, for the 3 foot that it got dragged.
Yeah, just to get it straight, then you could put a set of Dollies on. I'm not sure exactly how. I mean, you could still strap the actual top of the tire with your wheel straps. It's not. I mean, in theory, anywhere.
You could crack them down.
Yeah.
And leave them there, just not.
Ass. Yeah. And then you're up on the bed where you really shouldn't be.
Right? I mean, in theory, you could probably... I don't know. I've never tried it. I'm going to try that. I'm going to go out and try that one day. I'm going to try putting Dollies on something and dragging it up onto a bed. But, I mean, flatbed should have Dollies for those true doubles or those situations. But that's besides the point. That's a whole other episode. I will put a test together. I will try it out. I'll get back to you on it. There is 2 brand loyal people out there when it comes to Dollies, right? You've got your Collins Dollies. You've got your in the ditch Dollies. Those are the 2 major brands out there. I have always been an in the ditch guy. I think I've used Collins. I know I have, but not very often. I cannot say that I'm fully familiar with them. It's been a long time. I've always used in the ditch. But we got talking before this show. You had a problem recently with a brand new set of In the Ditch, and I've been having some problems with the In the Ditch. And I don't know if it's a quality control. I don't know if it's a design issue. Why don't you tell me what, to everyone listening, the problem you had the other day? And, we're in no way shitting on In the Ditch. I think they make a great product.
Yeah,
But
I just want to get that right out of the way. I use In the Ditch products every day, and 9 times out of 10, any problems that have happened to any of their products have been user error.
100%.
But this one time, it was not user error. So we bought a brand new set of dollies from a distributor, which is the dealer for In the Ditch. And we get the dollies back, and we put about 25 kilometers on this set of dollies. And so we get down to this call to pick up this all-wheel drive, whatever. And as we are setting the dollies down, we notice that, hey, that one tire is loose. And you can grab the top of the tire and rock it back and forth. Like there is probably about that much play if you're watching on video. That's not good, especially when you've got police standing right there wanting you to clear this wreck. So we are able to crack them up, get the car out of the way at least, and we pulled the dust caps off the bearings, and there's no lock nut. Just nut. It's not there. So you've got your actual nut for the bearing, but with these new style, you've got like a half circle and a flat spot on the stud.
It's like a lock washer that clicks in to a notched part of the hub and also grabs onto the bolt itself so that it can't
cover up
spin.
his face with a picture of what it's supposed to look like and what it's not. So I drove down to meet the operator who had the problem with it, to follow him back, because what he had to do is he had to get a screwdriver out and get that wedged in there on the actual nut to hold the bearing in and hammer it to get it tight again. So we were able to get it back, and we pulled off all the dust caps and pulled off all the tires, and one truck, so one side, didn't have any. The other side had both of them.
And that side was fine.
That side was fine. And the other side was not. Now, 2 parts are missing, the exact same part on both sides. I'm not sure how that made it out of the factory door like that. I don't know if someone took them apart. It didn't look like anyone took it apart by the time we were peeling them off for the first time. There was no marks from taking anything off. So I just think they weren't put on in the first place. Now I get everyone has a bad day, but you got to check these things, because to be honest with you, if we did one tow that was 60 kilometer tow, you put that on, you set it, it's a smaller car, let's say, you can't quite see the dollies.
It's tight at the time when you put it on, but as it gets shaking down the road. Yeah,
it was tight, and that's exactly what it is. That nut on there is tight, but it doesn't have its lock to keep it tight. And next thing you know, you've got a dolly tire flying off, so it's now gone. You could have damaged the car. You've damaged your brand new truck because it's down in the dirt now, dragging down the road before you get a chance to pull over. And you're like, what the fuck? They're brand new. You're not thinking to check brand new equipment that thoroughly. Yeah, throw some grease on it, grease all your grease nipples because they don't come pre-greased. And I'm not sure if you guys out there, if you're buying a brand new set of dollies, if you're greasing the bearings, because they should be sealed with grease from the factory, you would think, when they put them in the first place. But it's just any equipment. If you're buying Collins or In the Ditch, check your equipment. Our situation, we signed over all the warranty forms and everything through the distributor and back to In the Ditch, and we got a brand new whole truck. We said, well, we don't know if that spindle's been stretched or bent or anything. We just want a new,
oblonged or
yeah.
So
we'll
they came
keep
good
the tires and rims because we put kilometers on, but we want a whole new truck.
Okay.
And we got that, and it was fixed within the day. Granted, it did take all day, but it fixed our problem.
That's pretty reasonable. It's not a terrible timeline. But it's true. You always have to check your equipment. God damn it. Brand new wreckers that are getting delivered from manufacturers are running cables and hoses over top of sharp metal edges that vibrate. If they can't get that right on a $160,000 truck, for what Dollies are $3,500 for a set now or something.
Yeah,
They've
brand
gone
new
up
35
Canadian. They've gone up ridiculous. So do not lose your Dollies. Do not break your Dollies. Let's just stop dollying stuff. It's cheaper to take drive
stealing
shafts.
Dollies too.
Yeah, stop stealing Dollies in your case. No, I had a problem one day. First time I'd ever seen it. It was an in the ditch product. And again, I love their Dollies. It was a decent dolly tow. I want to say it was 110 kilometers or so, but it was a light vehicle. And it was going, 80 kilometer posted speed limit road max. So I had no problem doing it. I get there. First thing I always do whenever I get to the drop point, you get parked, whatever. Take your straps off, you flip your cam locks, and then you go to lower your dollies. I will not say if I use a bar or a boot. There's two methods. Some say the bar, some say the boot. All right, real talk. And when I went to flip one of the cam locks, it was a front tire on I believe the passenger side. Cam lock was gone. This cam lock was locked in going down the road and the cam lock was gone. Never seen this before. I called an old friend, Mr. Towing since Christ was a choir boy. Guy's seen everything. Said, have you ever seen that before? And he said, it's funny you asked that because one of our trucks here, we just had the exact same problem the other day. First time he had ever seen it. So, put a new cam lock in, right? Keep spares. That's why we keep stuff laying around. I unloaded the car. I got back to the shop. Lucky for me, it was a front tire. So the front tire, that the only way it would have really popped out and released back into its unloaded position had been if I was going backwards. If that was a trailing tire, I would have been much more, hey, you hit a train track a weird way. You hit a bump in the road the wrong way, and that thing is flipping right out because there's no cam lock holding it in. Got back, put a new cam lock in it. Did another long tow. A couple weeks later, gone again.
Wow.
Something's got to be out of place. Something's out of place. Something's bent. Something's out of line. I've never seen this before. And I still don't know what's causing it, but I can tell you what it is. If you've ever installed a cam lock on these dollies, how it works is you put the spring in, you put the cam lock in, you push it, put pressure on the spring, and then it pops out the other side and you thread in your little handle. It's those handles, those little thread ends that were backing off. The reason I found out, they wouldn't break, they would back off because after I'd do a tow about 20, 30K, I'd grab them and they were loose. I could thread them back in. They were slowly backing off because of vibration. Weirdly enough, it's always the same one, which really makes me wonder, maybe the hole isn't drilled to spec. Maybe there's a little bit of play, but the new cam lock every time. So one bad cam lock, maybe. Two bad cam locks. So anyways, moral of this story, Loctite.
Yeah.
Throw some Loctite, take your cam locks, take your little handles off, keep pressure on the pin, because if not, it'll shoot out the other end. Right? That's what forces it. Whenever you open it, it pulls this, it loads the spring more, pulls the pin out. When you release it, it pushes back out. With the spring loaded, locks them into their position. You can take your finger, a screwdriver, whatever you want, stuff it in there, unthread them, put some Loctite on it. I guarantee you I'm not the only one that's had that problem. Just lucky I caught it. Just lucky it was on a good tire.
Yeah. Moral of the story is check your equipment even if you think everything's all good and hunky-dory.
Some asshole's going to email us and say, oh, that's why you buy Collins. They don't do that.
I've used a set of Collins dollies before for 7 months. And to be honest with you, they're an older set. I liked them until the winter hit. And then I found that the release handles would start to get a little brittle and want to start bending if you had any pressure loaded on the tires. And then your little L lock arm wouldn't slid over it properly.
Yeah. Your secondary lock, I think it was called.
And a little bit of snow and ice and sludge would get built up. And they've got a lot of moving parts, these Collins dollies. And it's just a lot more wear points, I find. In the summertime, don't get me wrong, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. They give you lots of options with the ratcheting system. I I really like that.
Yeah, different stages of height, and depending, you don't need the big bar to,
So if you've got a car nosed up to a garage and you're using in the ditch and you got to dolly the front end, instead of just having to click that tire back over into the transport position to try to get a little height to drive it forward enough to then fully crack your bar over, with the Collins dollies, you can just crack as far as you can and, okay, well, pull ahead 5 feet and finish the job.
Yeah,
That's nice.
It's true. It's true.
And it's safe too, in case you lose your footing. That crack up bar is not shooting back out or anything like that. They are nice. They both have their pros and cons. I prefer in the ditch just because I find they're simpler and easier to maintain. For that reason, there's less moving parts on them. And to be honest with you, this incident, and I'm sure yours, isn't going to stop us from buying their products in the future.
No, I agree.
Because they make good products. It's just, now that I know that there is some problems and could just be a manufacturing blip, who knows? Just check it, just like you would check anything.
Well, that leads us to a good question to leave everybody on is comment on the video, like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, comment on the video, or send us an email, find us on Facebook, drop a comment. Collins or in the ditch? Why? I don't want to just hear, oh, I like Collins, I like in the ditch. I want to hear why. Message us on social media. Visit the webpage. There's a contact form to fill out there, www.towinglife.ca. Facebook at the Towing Life Podcast. Email thetowinglife@gmail.com. Any of those 3 ways, or comment on the YouTube video below. Collins or in the ditch, and why? Stay tuned, so that we do have we'll put out the poll in the next week or so on who you want to see replaced for an episode. You will not get to choose the other co-host. It'd get very interesting. But we will do that little swap. I really like that swap idea, G. Hey, it might give me a week off, might give you a week off.
Hey, no, it won't give me a week off. I still got to edit this video, apparently.
Might give me a week off and you'll like your new co-host better. Let's see what happens with it. I'm all ears for it. So guys, keep an eye out for that poll. Don't forget, like you said, questions, comments, concerns, anything. Website, Facebook, email. I've said it a million times through this episode. If you don't know what they are yet, too bad. www.towinglife.ca, at the Towing Life Podcast on Facebook, towinglife@gmail.com.
And this is my favorite part of the video because I get to tell PlainGuy to shut the fuck up and get all the pandering out of the way. And I want to personally thank you for listening and sticking to the end. And I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. And for that poll, I really do hope you swing in my favor because I'm always nice at the end and at the beginning. With that said, guys, thanks for watching. We've enjoyed making this. Hopefully you enjoyed listening and watching. And we'll see you next week.
Take care.
Bye for now.